The rise to power, 1933. When hatred became law, January 30th, 1933. Adolf Hitler becomes Chancellor of Germany. A nation of 566,000 Jews wakes up to a new reality. Within 8 weeks, the first concentration camp opens at Dachau. Not to kill, not yet. To imprison political opponents, to silence critics, to disappear anyone who resists. On April 1st, Nazi stormtroopers stand outside Jewish shops across Germany. They paint stars of David on the windows. They carry signs that read, "Germans, defend yourselves. Don't buy from Jews." Customers who try to enter are photographed, their faces published in newspapers, their neighbors informed. 6 days later, the law for the restoration of the professional civil service removes all Jews from government jobs. Doctors, professors, lawyers, scientists. One signature erases careers that took lifetimes to build. This is stage one. Not violence, not murder. Something more insidious. The slow, legal erasure of an entire people from public life. The message is clear, but you are no longer German. You are no longer welcome. But this was only the beginning. 2 years later, the persecution would become permanent. The Nuremberg Laws, 1935. When identity became a crime. September 15th, 1935. The Reichstag convenes in Nuremberg. In a single afternoon, 2 laws transform German Jews from citizens into subjects. The Reich Citizenship Law strips citizenship from anyone with 3 or 4 Jewish grandparents. The law for the protection of German blood bans marriage between Jews and non-Jews. It bans relationships. It bans Jewish households from employing German women under 45. Edward Adler, a young Jewish man from Hamburg, was arrested that year for dating a non-Jewish woman. "I got 6 months in prison," he later testified. Solitary confinement for going with a Gentile girl. Charts appear in schools explaining who is Jewish, who is mixed blood, who is German. Bureaucrats in Berlin decide that someone with 2 Jewish grandparents is Jewish only if they practice the faith or marry a Jew. Your ancestry, your religion, your grandmother's maiden name. These now determine whether you can work, whether you can marry, whether you can exist. By the end of 1935, Jews cannot own radios, cannot practice medicine, cannot buy chocolate, cannot sit on park benches marked "not for Jews." But the world said nothing, and 3 years later, silence would shatter into glass. Kristallnacht, November 1938. The night everything changed. November 9th, 1938, 9:30 p.m. Across Germany, Austria, and the Sudetenland, the signal goes out. By midnight, 1,400 synagogues are burning. By morning, 7,500 Jewish businesses lie in ruins. Shattered glass covers the streets so thick that newspapers call it Kristallnacht, the night of broken glass. In Munich, Kaufingerstrasse looks as if it had been raided by a bombing plane, reports the New York Times. In Vienna, the Neue Weltgasse synagogue burns through the night. In Berlin, stormtroopers drag Jewish men from their beds. Albert Friedlander, 7 years old in Berlin, remembers walking to school the next morning. There was a lot of glass on the streets. We had no trouble picking out the Jewish shops. They had been looted, the windows smashed, and there were ashes, rubble, and debris outside. The official death toll, 91 murdered. But modern historians count the suicides, the deaths in custody, the beatings that killed days later. The real number reaches into the hundreds. Perhaps over 1,000. 30,000 Jewish men are arrested. Not for crimes, for existing. They are shipped to Dachau, Buchenwald, Sachsenhausen. And when they return, broken, beaten, shaved, the Nazi government demands payment. 1 billion Reichsmarks. A fine imposed on the victims for the damage done to them. The world condemns the violence. President Roosevelt says he could scarcely believe that such things could occur in a 20th century civilization. But when asked if America will accept more Jewish refugees, he replies, "That is not in contemplation. We have the quota system." The Jews of Germany now understood. No one was coming to save them, and their prisons were about to get much smaller. The Ghettos, 1940 to 1942, walls built to kill. November 16th, 1940. The Warsaw Ghetto seals shut. 400,000 Jews are now imprisoned in 1.3 square miles. That's 30% of Warsaw's population in 2.4% of its space. 7 to 10 people per room. Families sleeping in shifts. The daily food ration, 184 calories, a tenth of what a human needs to survive. The ghetto administration deliberately starves its prisoners. An official order from April 1941 states it plainly. The basic provisioning of the Jewish residential district must be less than the minimum necessary for preserving life, regardless of the consequences. Consequences come quickly. By August 1941, more than 5,000 Jews die every month, from starvation, from typhus, from despair. Children with swollen bellies beg in the streets. Elderly freeze in unheated rooms. Bodies are collected each morning like garbage. Emanuel Ringelblum, a historian trapped inside, writes in his diary, "Children starving to death. In Łódź, 164,000 Jews survive on 1,100 calories per day, half the minimum required for life. Over 45,000 will die from starvation and disease before the deportations even begin. The ghettos were never meant as permanent homes. They were holding pens, extraction camps designed to drain every last possession, every last ounce of strength from a condemned population. But even starvation was too slow for the Nazi leadership. In January 1942, they gathered to plan something faster. The Wannsee Conference, January 1942. The meeting that planned genocide, January 20th, 1942, 56 to 58 Am Großen Wannsee, a villa overlooking a frozen lake in suburban Berlin. 15 men sit down for a 90-minute meeting that will murder 6 million people. Reinhard Heydrich opens with a number, 11 million. That's how many Jews live in Europe. All of them, he explains, will be evacuated to the east. Everyone in the room knows what this means. The mass shootings have already killed 900,000 Jews in the Soviet Union. The gas vans at Chełmno have been operating for 6 weeks. This meeting isn't about whether to kill. It's about how. The minutes record the discussion in bloodless bureaucratic language. Jews will be allocated for labor. Those who survive will have to be treated accordingly. The final remnant must be eliminated because they represent the seed of a new Jewish revival, not one of the 15 men objects. Adolf Eichmann, who will coordinate the deportations, later describes what happened after the meeting ended. Heydrich and Heinrich Müller, head of the Gestapo, invite him to stay. They sit by the fireplace, they drink brandy, they smoke cigarettes. Heydrich, the architect of genocide, is celebrating. The system is in place, the trains will run, the camps will open. Within months, 1.7 million Jews will be murdered. Within 3 years, 6 million. But the killing centers still needed to be built, and one name would come to define the horror of the final solution. The death camps, 1942 to 1944. Industrial murder, Auschwitz-Birkenau. The name itself carries the weight of 1 million dead. The first gassings occur on September 3, 1941. 600 Soviet prisoners of war and 250 sick Polish inmates are locked in the basement of Block 11. Zyklon B pellets are dropped through the ceiling. Within 20 minutes, everyone is dead. The SS realizes they have found their method. By 1943, 4 gas chambers operate at Birkenau. Each holds 2,000 people. The crematoria can burn 4,756 corpses every 24 hours. At peak capacity in 1944, up to 6,000 people are murdered and burned every single day. The process is mechanical. Jews arrive by train. SS doctors separate those who will work from those who will die. The condemned are told they will shower. They undress. They walk into the gas chamber. The door locks behind them. Zyklon B takes 10 to 20 minutes. The Sonderkommando, Jewish prisoners forced to dispose of the bodies, wear gas masks as they drag corpses to the crematorium. They cut hair from the women. They extract gold from the teeth. Elie Wiesel, who survived Auschwitz, wrote, "Bread, soup, these were my whole life. I was a body. Perhaps less than that even, a starved stomach. The stomach alone was aware of the passage of time. In total, 1.1 million people are murdered at Auschwitz. 960,000 are Jews. 865,000 never even entered the camp. They walked directly from the trains to the gas chambers. Treblinka kills 870,000. Bełżec kills 434,000. Sobibor kills 167,000. Chełmno kills 152,000. By November 1944, as Soviet forces approach, Heinrich Himmler orders the gassings to stop. The gas chambers are destroyed. The evidence must disappear. But one final horror awaits. The Germans are not finished killing. The death marches. 1945. The final murders? January 17, 1945. Soviet forces are 40 miles from Auschwitz. The SS has 67,000 prisoners to dispose of. Over the next 10 days, 56,000 inmates are marched west through the frozen Polish winter. Temperatures drop to minus 20 Celsius. Prisoners wear thin, striped uniforms. Many have no shoes. Anyone who falls behind is shot. Siegfried Fedrid, an Austrian tailor born deaf, grabs a blanket as he leaves the camp. Instead of wrapping it around himself, he tears it into strips and shares them with other prisoners. Small acts of humanity in a landscape of murder. At least 15,000 die on the Auschwitz marches alone. Bodies line the roadsides for miles. And Auschwitz is just the beginning. From Stutthof, 50,000 prisoners are marched toward the sea. 25,000 die, half of everyone who started. From Gross Rosen, 44,000 are evacuated in February. Half of the Jews among them are murdered before or during the march. In total, 700,000 concentration camp prisoners are forced onto death marches in the final 6 months of the war. 250,000 are murdered along the way. Werner Koppel, an Auschwitz survivor, later described the moment it ended, the last week of January 1945, meeting the first Soviet officer after escaping from the death march. Seeing him made me realize what freedom means. Liberation and aftermath. The counting of the dead. January 27, 1945. Soviet soldiers enter the gates of Auschwitz. They find 7,000 prisoners too sick to march. They find 7,000 kilograms of human hair in bags ready for shipment. Over the following months, Allied forces liberate camp after camp. The images they capture, the piles of bodies, the walking skeletons, the ovens still warm, shock the world. When the counting ends, the numbers are almost impossible to comprehend. 6 million Jews murdered, 2/3 of Europe's Jewish population. 1.5 million were children. Entire communities erased. Of the 3.3 million Jews living in Poland before the war, only 300,000 survive. In Greece, 87% are killed. In the Netherlands, 75%. In Hungary, 70%. Elie Wiesel, who lost his mother and youngest sister to the gas chambers, wrote decades later, "For the survivor who chooses to testify, it is clear. His duty is to bear witness for the dead and for the living. To forget would be not only dangerous but offensive. To forget the dead would be akin to killing them a second time." The Holocaust did not begin with gas chambers. It began with words, with laws, with neighbors turning away. Stage by stage, step by step, an entire civilization descended into murder. The final lesson is not just about the dead. It is about how few people chose to stop it, and how many chose to look away.